It was a very, very violent attack on Robin. She was stabbed 49 times. It looks like a personal attack. Wounds, a lot focusing around her face and her neck area. There were a lot of defensive wounds that were on her hands and her arms, where clearly she tried to fight back.
On September 7th, 2023, two detectives drove 400 miles from Fairfax County, Virginia, to a quiet suburb in upstate New York. They had a name. They had a DNA composite sketch. They had 3.5 years of genealogy work, tracing 1,500 distant cousins through Canadian family trees. They did not have a confession. When they arrived at Stephen Smirk's home in Niskayuna, he was in his driveway taking out the trash. They identified themselves as cold case detectives from Virginia. They asked if they could talk. Smirk said yes. They asked for a DNA swab. He signed the consent form without a single question. In 5 minutes, it was done. The detectives left their business card and drove to their hotel. Then the phone rang. It was Smirk. "I'm at the police department," he told Detective Melissa Wallace. "I'm here to turn myself in." She said, "Turn yourself in for what?" What followed was a full confession to a murder that had sat unsolved for 29 years. A mother of a 2-year-old stabbed 49 times in her own bedroom while her daughter wandered the house alone. A washcloth with a bloodstain so small it was nearly missed. And a killer who had spent 3 decades living an ordinary suburban life. Married, employed, raising 2 kids in high school, while Robin Lawrence's family buried her without knowing who put her there. This is the case of Robin Lawrence. Welcome back to Crime Watch Central USA. Today's case is 29 years of silence, one volunteer genealogist working for free in her spare time, and a phone call that nobody saw coming. If you are new here, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We go deep on the cases that almost stayed buried forever. Let's get into it. Springfield, Virginia, 1994. A quiet residential neighborhood in Fairfax County. Leafy cul-de-sacs, family homes, the kind of suburb where people knew their neighbors and children played outside without anyone watching the clock. Reseca Lane was exactly that kind of street. Number 8600 was a home with promise. A young couple fixing it up, improving the yard, building something together. From the outside, it looked like exactly what it was, a family in the early stages of a life. What happened inside that house on the night of November 18th, 1994, would change Fairfax County forever. Robin Ware Lawrence was 37 years old. She was born in Memphis, Tennessee, the daughter of Robert Ware Sr., a World War II veteran, and his wife Jessie. She grew up during the tail end of the Civil Rights era, the daughter of parents who had lived under Jim Crow, who could not ride in the front of a bus or visit the city zoo except on Tuesdays. Robin channeled everything she witnessed into art. She earned a fine arts degree from Carnegie Mellon University, a prestigious program that demanded technical precision and creative vision in equal measure. What she produced after graduation announced her talent to the world in an extraordinary way. Robin was selected to sculpt the first medal for the Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent Peace Prize, which was awarded to Rosa Parks. For her parents, who had grown up in a Memphis that refused to see them as equals, watching their daughter's hands create a medal honoring the woman who refused to give up her seat was something language could not fully hold. "That was a big deal," her sister Mary would later say. "For my parents, who could not ride in the front of the bus, that was a big deal." Her father, Robert Sr., a World War II veteran who was 101 years old at the time of Smirk's sentencing, described his daughter simply, "She was a powerful lady in this world. Her drawings are not just paintings, they are powerful." Robin's friends described her the same way, not through her accomplishments, but through her presence. Her friend Lori Lindbergh met her in ballet class. "I was like, oh my God, this woman is beautiful," Lori recalled. But what was really fun about Robin was she was very personable, very fun-loving, just very down-to-earth. In the late 1980s, Robin was dating a man named Ollie Lawrence, calm, kind, the kind of person who made people feel at ease. They married on New Year's Eve, 1989. 3 years later, they welcomed their daughter Nicole. By 1994, Robin was working in advertising. Ollie had risen to an executive position at an airline. They were fixing up their home on Reseca Lane. They were, by every account, exactly where they had planned to be. Nicole was 2 years old. She had recently undergone a liver transplant, a procedure that left her dependent on immunosuppressive medication to survive. She needed that medication taken on schedule, every day, without exception. Robin understood that. Ollie understood it. It was the rhythm their household was built around. Nobody who knew Robin Lawrence could have pointed to a single enemy. Not one person who wished her harm. Not one relationship that carried the weight of danger. Her niece, Lauren Ovens, who was 8 years old when Robin was killed, remembered her simply, "I remember her being angelic." On Friday, November 18, 1994, Ollie Lawrence flew to the Bahamas for a business trip. Robin was home with Nicole. The last confirmed contact anyone had with Robin was around 6 p.m. that Friday evening. Investigators believe she was killed approximately 3.5 hours later, around 9:30 p.m. At some point that night, someone cut the window screen on the back deck of the house at Reseca Lane. They climbed through. They moved through the house toward the master bedroom. Robin was in her bed. What followed was 49 stab wounds. Defensive wounds on her hands, knife wounds in her back and legs, a severe gaping wound to her neck. The phone cord in the bedroom had been cut. She had fought her way out of the bed and continued fighting. The blood on the walls of the master bedroom told the story of a woman who did not stop until she could not go on. The killer cleaned up in the bathroom, then he left. Nicole was alone in the house. She was 2 years old, immunosuppressive medication running out by the hour, wandering through rooms that no child should have had to move through. At some point, she found tissues near her mother's body and placed them on her wounds, the way a child who had watched adults treat cuts and scrapes understood that blood needed something pressed against it. She brought empty baby bottles to where her mother lay. She was trying to feed her. She was alone in that house for 2 days. By Sunday, November 20th, Ollie had been trying to reach Robin all weekend from the Bahamas. She was not answering. He called his friend Lori Lindbergh and asked if she would go to the house to check on Robin. Lori said yes. There was no answer at the front door. Lori went around to the back. She saw it immediately. The window screen on the back deck had been cut. She had to climb through to get inside. Nicole came down the hall to meet her. Her eyes were just so big, Lori would later recall. Her little face was there was no expression on it. Lori moved down the hall. She could see into the master bedroom from the corridor. The walls told her everything she needed to know before she reached the doorway. She called the police. Then she rushed Nicole to the hospital. The little girl did not appear physically injured, but she had been alone for 2 days without her medication, and her health was fragile enough that every hour mattered. Lead crime scene detective Mark Garman was among the first officers on site. He documented what he found methodically, moving from the exterior of the house inward, the cut window screen, the entry point on the back deck, the trail through the house, the master bedroom. "I had no idea what the scene looked like until I walked around the corner into the master bedroom," Garman said. There was no ambiguity about what had happened. This was not a burglary interrupted. Nothing had been taken, not cash, not jewelry, not anything of value visible in the room. This was a targeted, prolonged, deeply personal attack on a woman who was home alone with her toddler. "It looks like a personal attack," Garman noted. Every investigator who processed that scene reached the same conclusion. Whoever did this knew the house, or knew Robin, or both. They were wrong about that. But they would not know that for 29 years. Investigators began building a timeline and establishing who had access to Robin and her home. The focus moved quickly to Ollie Lawrence. He had been having an affair with a colleague, a fact investigators uncovered as they dug into the marriage. The timing was noted. His wife was murdered the same weekend he left the country. Detectives flew to the Bahamas and confirmed every element of his alibi. He had been on the flight he was supposed to be on. He was at the hotel he was supposed to be at. He had not left. They interviewed Ollie's lover and found no evidence of any connection to the crime. Robin's sister and brother said they never believed Ollie was involved. With Ollie eliminated, investigators had almost nothing. The killer had left no fingerprints. No witnesses had seen anything on Reseca Lane that Friday night. No one in the neighborhood had reported anything unusual. Then, Detective Garman noticed something in the bathroom. On the towel rod near the sliding tub door, there was a washcloth. It had a small brownish stain on it. Easy to miss. Easy to overlook. He photographed it. He documented it. He had it tested. The stain was blood, and it did not belong to Robin Lawrence. Forensic analysts extracted DNA from that washcloth, a profile that did not match Ollie, did not match his lover, did not match anyone connected to the Lawrence household. Investigators believed it belonged to Robin's killer, most likely cut during the attack and then cleaned up in the bathroom before he left. That profile was uploaded to CODIS, the FBI's national DNA database. No match. Complete silence. The investigation stalled, and then it went cold. The years passed. Robin's family carried the absence forward, not as a wound that healed, but as one that remained open. Her mother Jessie died without knowing who had killed her daughter. Her father Robert Sr., who had fought in a world war and watched his daughter create art that honored the heroes of the civil rights movement, lived with that unanswered question into his 100s. When my mother died, that was kind of like, well, she went to her grave not knowing what happened to her child. Mary War Cowan said, at that point, I said, I have to just kind of let it go. Nicole grew up without a mother. Lauren, her cousin, stayed close to her throughout, but they rarely talked about Robin. I didn't want to make her anxious or make her nervous, Lauren said. It was better left unsaid. Investigators did not let it go. In 2019, Fairfax County Police turned to Parabon NanoLabs, a Virginia-based DNA technology company specializing in genetic genealogy and forensic phenotyping. Ellen Graytack, director of bioinformatics at Parabon, ran the washcloth DNA through GEDNA, two consumer ancestry databases that return results showing people who share DNA with an unknown individual. The results were discouraging. The matches were extremely distant. Fourth cousins, sixth cousins, relationships so far removed that the shared ancestor could have lived generations back. Parabon assessed the case and told investigators the solvability rate was effectively zero. They did not have the time or the money to untangle a family tree that diffuse. That could have been the end. A volunteer with the Fairfax County Police Department named Liz, who asked that her last name not be used, offered to take it on herself. She was an amateur genealogist. It was a hobby. She did it in her spare time, for free, because she believed she could actually help. I just felt I wanted to give something back to the community, she said. What she was handed was approximately 1,500 distant cousins sharing tiny fragments of DNA with the unknown suspect. No first cousins, no second cousins, mostly fourth to sixth. Parabon had assessed this as unsolvable. Liz agreed it was a needle in a haystack. She started anyway. Using the ethnicity breakdown Parabon had established, roughly half Eastern European, 25% Irish, a mixture of English, Italian, and Scandinavian making up the rest, Liz began building family trees from the most promising cousin matches and working backward through generations. It took 3.5 years. I was ready to give up a number of times, she said, but I kept thinking, well, I'll just finish this. Just do this one more thing. In 2023, she found what she was looking for. 2 cousins in the database, not related to each other through any path she could trace, both sharing DNA with the unknown suspect. If she could find the couple where their 2 separate family trees connected, that couple would be the suspect's ancestors. And what I found was this woman on this tree married this man on this tree, she said. That was it. That was the aha moment. He is a descendant of this couple right here. 3.5 years, 1 volunteer, working for free, one more thing at a time. She sent Detective Melissa Wallace an email in August 2023. I think I found someone of interest. Detective Wallace pulled everything available on the name Liz had identified. Computer programmer. Niskayuna, New York. Married. 2 kids in high school. Nice house in the suburbs. Not so much as a speeding ticket on his record. I'm thinking, there's no way this is our guy, Wallace said. Then they found his yearbook photo from 1988, age 16. They held it against the DNA phenotyping composite Parabon had generated. Fair skin, wider jaw, narrower nose, dark blue eyes, light brown hair. It looked very similar to the phenotyping sketch, Detective John Long said. We're like, well, you know, maybe this does make sense. On September 7, 2023, Wallace and Long drove 400 miles to Niskayuna, New York. They arrived at Smirk's address. He was in his driveway, taking the trash to the curb. They identified themselves. They said they were investigating a cold case from the 1990s. They asked if he would talk. He said yes. He invited them inside. What happened next struck both detectives as deeply unusual. When investigators ask someone to provide a DNA swab as part of a murder investigation, the conversation typically takes 45 minutes. People have questions. They want to know what is happening. They want to understand why their DNA is relevant. Smirk had no questions. Not one. There was no surprise. There was no fear. Nothing, said Long, stone-faced. He signed the consent form. He gave the swab. The detectives left their business card and drove to their hotel. They were preparing to return to Virginia when Detective Wallace's phone rang. It was Smirk. He said he was at the Niskayuna Police Department. He said he wanted to turn himself in. The station was locked, and he was having trouble getting anyone to let him in. I was freaking out, Wallace said. I ran down to his room and I'm banging on his door. I'm like, we gotta go to the police department. He's turning himself in. Detectives reached the Niskayuna Police Department. Local officers had taken Smirk into custody. He was ready to talk. Wallace and Long sat down with him and let him lead. He told them he was 22 years old in November 1994, an active-duty soldier stationed at Fort Myer in Arlington, Virginia. On the night of November 18th, he had been drinking beer. He had been taking ephedrine pills, a stimulant later banned by the FDA, in part because of dangerous psychiatric side effects when combined with other substances. He drove to the West Springfield area because he was familiar with the neighborhood. A friend of his had lived in a house nearby. He told them he was wearing a ski mask and leather gloves. He said he entered the house through the back deck window. He went down the hall to the master bedroom. He told investigators one of the reasons he had enlisted in the Army was because he wanted to kill. When Detective Wallace asked if he had been injured during the attack, the critical question that would connect him to the washcloth, he confirmed he had cut himself. That was why his blood was in Robin's bathroom. That's when I knew, Wallace said. That was the biggest confirmation. At one point during the interrogation, Smirk looked at the detectives and said, I honestly believe that if it wasn't for my wife and my kids, I probably would be a serial killer. I am a serial killer, who's only killed once. He expressed no remorse during the interrogation. He did not ask about Robin's family. He did not ask about Nicole. When Long asked if he wanted to say anything to Robin's loved ones, he did not take the opening. I think what you see is 100% what you get from him, said Wallace. Arrogance, entitlement, he wanted to do it, so he did it, and that's it. A week after the confession, forensic testing confirmed Smirk's DNA matched the blood on the washcloth. The probability that it was not his, 1 in more than 7 million. In the 29 years between Robin Lawrence's murder and his arrest, Stephen Smirk had built a life that showed nothing of what he had done. He left the Army, honorably discharged, and became a computer programmer. He married a defense attorney named Dawn Budarak. They had 2 children. They lived in a comfortable suburban home in Niskayuna, New York. No criminal record of any kind. Not a single arrest. Not a speeding ticket. Former FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole, who reviewed the case, said the absence of a criminal record means nothing in isolation. The absence of a rap sheet does not mean that criminal behavior is absent, she said. It means that they didn't get arrested for it. O'Toole also pushed back on Smirk's claim that Robin's murder was random. He brought a weapon. He wore a mask. He wore gloves. He went on a night when Robin's husband was confirmed to be out of the country. This was purposeful, O'Toole said. Went inside somebody's home, took enormous risk. That suggests to me more of a targeting than it does randomness. At sentencing, Smirk's defense attorney, his wife, told the court that in 1994, he was a troubled young man with undiagnosed bipolar II disorder, struggling with alcohol and substance abuse. She said he had spent decades seeking help, becoming sober, building a family. She said he confessed because he felt genuine remorse. The interrogation tape showed something different. Every day, his attorney said, when asked if he had thought about Robin. Every day, he'd think about it. Robin's niece Lauren sat in that courtroom and watched him. There was no emotion, she said. It didn't feel real. It just made me feel angry. Robin's family had wanted a trial. We wanted the world to know what he did, Mary said. We wanted the spectacle of that satisfaction. They did not get it. In October 2024, Stephen Smirk accepted a plea deal for first-degree murder. Commonwealth Attorney Steve Descano said the agreement guaranteed accountability while removing the risk of witness memories fading or key testimony becoming unavailable across 3 decades. On March 7, 2025, Smirk appeared in court for sentencing. The judge called Robin's murder among the worst in the history of Fairfax County. Smirk addressed the family directly for the first time. No family should have to wait 30 years for justice for a loved one. I am extremely sorry for the pain and suffering I have caused. The judge sentenced him to the maximum allowed under the plea, 70 years in prison, with the possibility of parole. Robin's father, Robert Sr., 101 years old, a World War II veteran who had watched his daughter create art that honored Rosa Parks, had lived long enough to hear the answer. Robin's brother, Robert Jr., addressed the court. The impact of this crime has been devastating beyond measure. No family should endure such prolonged suffering. Outside the courthouse, Ollie Lawrence gave a statement. The Warren Lawrence family are grateful that justice has finally been done for the murder of our beloved Robin. Nicole, who had been 2 years old in that house, who had placed tissues on her mother's wounds, who had brought empty baby bottles trying to feed her, stood next to her cousin Lauren as Lauren spoke to reporters. As much as it's a sigh of relief, we still have to live with this, Lauren said, her voice breaking. It just doesn't go away. She looked at Nicole beside her. She's strong. She stood next to me and she held my hand. Oh my God, if her mom could see us. Robin Lawrence was 37 years old. She had sculpted a medal for Rosa Parks. She had a daughter who left tissues beside her trying to stop the bleeding. She had a family that carried the open wound of not knowing for 29 years. A volunteer genealogist worked 1,500 cousins across 3.5 years in her spare time for free. A washcloth in a bathroom almost nobody noticed closed the case. Stephen Smirk sentenced himself the moment he picked up the phone. Before you go, Smirk's own defense attorney said he thought about Robin every single day for 30 years. His interrogation tape showed no remorse. Do you believe him? Or do you think the confession was, as Detective Wallace said, purely about control? Tell us below. If this case stayed with you, hit like and subscribe to Crime Watch Central USA. We cover the cases that time almost buried for good. The next one is already waiting.